Were you in that river, the river of life? That's the wellspring that Mary was talking about, the wellspring of living that we all share together. You can feel it. It's not something you have to see, but you feel it. It's an inherent connection between all of us that can feel things. We can feel the love, we can feel the inspiration and the caring that comes when we share from that depth of our being. You know, in that rose, there's an inherent knowing that it's supposed to grow and become. And that same knowing is inside of us. There's something that's pushing us to grow and evolve. And when Kirk shared they were singing the song The Rose this morning, it reminded me of marriage ceremonies that I've done. I haven't done one for a year, but one thing I do many times in a marriage ceremony is I do a rose ceremony where each one of the couples, each member of the couple takes a rose and they look at the beauty of the rose. And these are the words that are spoken. A rose is a symbol of love. Let us consider the message of this beautiful flower and what it gives to the world. The rose blooms because of an inner beauty that must express. It does not need the admiration or love of another. It just needs to express this beauty because it only knows to be beautiful. Even if resentment is directed toward the rose, it still has to continue to express that inherent beauty that it knows from within. Now, because a rose really doesn't have free will, we have that same inherent knowing in us. We each have a unique expression of spirit to express, but we have to do a little bit more to develop that knowing. It's there, and it just wants to grow, and it wants to become, and it wants to blossom. And it's from that river of spirit, that same river we all share, the oneness of God that's all ours. We're just the unique expression, and we have to do our part. But that work takes courage. You know, our life will expand or shrink according to our courage. It was a couple of weeks ago I read the Hopi prophecy in year 2000, where the elders said, you know, there's a river flowing very fast, and this could be a very good time. But some of us are hanging on to the shore, trying to keep things the same. And we have to let go. We have to have the courage to let go and go into the middle of that wellspring of life, that flowing spirit, the courage to keep our head up and our eyes open. But it takes courage to do that. It takes conviction and determination to let go to something new. But if we realize the mystics all speak the same language. They all tell us the same thing. There's one truth, just one, with different expressions. And if we're looking outside to find out who we're supposed to be, we're definitely looking in the wrong place. Ramakrishna, a 19th century Hindu mystic, talks about how all people look for God. That's what we're looking for, but we all find a God, or whatever name we call it, with our different preference or temperament or what we're really looking for. We find all these different, the one spirit, and call it different names. And then different religions get together and they fight, and quarrel over which one is right, when there's only one truth with 1,000 different names. If we go back to the river analogy, this river of life, that same river of spirit flowing through everything. There's one river and many wells. And we can put our bucket down into the river to get the water, and we pull up the same water, but we call it different names. We can call it agua or yasser or jal or whatever language it is. You call it by a different name, but it's the same water that we all drink. And that water, whether it's the physical water or the water of spirit, wants to soften us and awaken us and quicken us and energize us. And sometimes it does it spontaneously. It's like I don't know if you felt the God bumps in that song, but I could just feel the bumps because I could feel the connection of life. And when we cry, those tears are tears we share. That's the way we're connected at the heart, the place this wellspring connects us all. If it's the tears of inspiration, when someone does something so beautiful and so great, that inspiration comes up through us and we shed the tears that connect us all. Or if it's a time of grief and great sadness, we can have that same feeling, that same energy and understanding. So Matthew Fox, and I know he's been here and has touched many of us in his ecumenical way of thinking, even though he's an Episcopal priest, he's very ecumenical in his approach to life, and he has a new book out. And his new book is called Julian of Norwich, Wisdom in a Time of Pandemic and Beyond. Now, Julian of Norwich was a 14th century English Christian mystic. She was a kick, really. I mean, she was a fireball. But if you think about it, she knew how to shelter in place because she lived in England during the time of the great pandemic, the Black Death, through much of her life. And there were two waves of that pandemic. And in the first one, I read 40 to 60% of the population died. And then in the second wave that happened 10 some years later, 20% of the population died. And she lived through that. And she said, people were freaking out, which we understand because we've been there, freaking out that nature's gone awry and screaming and yelling. And she was holding her ground. Her spirituality and her intellectual wisdom, knowing that life is inherently good, and so is everything in it. And during that time, she looked for the awe and the sacredness in everything, even sheltering in place. In fact, she went from that to becoming the, I can't remember the word, what is it? The anchoress of the protector of St. Julian's Church. And she lived really within four walls in her cell, but she wrote a book called, I can't remember that either, called Revelations of Divine Love. That Revelations of Divine Love, it's the only book written by a mystic, a medieval mystic that has survived. And she was the first woman to write a book in English. And she called God with a feminine face. She was breaking a lot of the traditions of the time, but she's wise and beautiful and wonderful. And she said, all contain the whole of creation and the Creator. That's because God is inside of us. And inside God is everything. Anyone who loves God loves all. That was so long ago in her direct revelation. Matthew Fox said in his book, if Julian of Norwich was here today, she'd say, hey, wake up. Go deep. Go past the darkness. And I'll tell you what you'll find. You'll find inspiration and love and connection. And take care of Mother Earth, because this is the sacred home on which we live. Don't you love Julian of Norwich? Yeah. Isn't she amazing? I want to get to know her. I'll have to see what I can do. But anyway, she's amazing. So, and as Mary said, so all this is available to us. And the mystics all got it. And as you mentioned Jesus, who I'll talk about in a minute, he had so much flow of that inspiration and that river of life. He didn't live in anything but faith and trust and sacred relationship with everything and oneness. Beautiful. But we can pollute the water. You know, we live in this stream, but the difference between us and the rose is we can decide to think we're not worth blooming, think we're not good enough, or someone else has more than we do, so we get jealous and we turn off the flow, or we get angry because that person is having a different experience than we are, and so we get angry about it. We can turn off that flow and pollute the water. But as Mary said, we can't destroy it. We can heal it and reveal it and come to a new awareness of how we're opening to life. So where, right now, are you polluting that inspiration that's divinely yours? Where are you polluting it and not letting it fill you? Now, we don't all have to go out and write a book or do something amazing and wonderful in the outer creation, but we can become more connected to spirit, more loving and kind. Because the more goodness, all of this revelation, by the way, has to be self-discovery. We can't have someone else do it for us, no matter how much we pay them, no matter what we do for them. We have to do this ourselves. It's self-discovery. And if once we discover that connection to the oneness and allness of life in this river, we can be an inspiration to others and help wake others up. But we have to first and foremost do this work on our own. So think, where are you blocking the flow? What thoughts of self-doubt, what words of condemnation or negativity are you using that you're willing and ready to change? Because you cannot, as Heraclitus, the Greek philosopher, said, you can't step in the same river twice. We're always changing and growing. You can stand on the riverbank and watch the river, and it can be the same river, but the content is always different. In this life, we can't remain stagnant or still. We're either growing and expanding and awakening, or we're repressing. But it's our choice. So right now, think, where is it that I'm hanging on to something that doesn't work anymore? Where am I called to be revitalized, re-energized, reawakened to something new? Because this is the time. You know, I was thinking, I was on the freeway yesterday. We're getting back. And I thought, I don't want to go back. I want to go better. This is our opportunity right now. We've been through hell, but we don't have to stay there. We don't have to build a house and live there. We can decide to do something better right here and now. So we have to remember the courage. Anais Nin, a beautiful French-American writer, said there comes the day when the risk to stay in the bud becomes more painful than the risk it takes to blossom. I think this is a time in our world right now where we're blossoming to that river of life, where we can be open to newness, where we can be more accepting and caring and moving into a new understanding about ourselves and life. In the Bible, I believe it's Psalm 42:7, says, deep calls unto deep. And if you and I take time every single day to touch the deep in us, that place that doesn't touch any of the pollution or anything, but only knows the river of inspiration, love, and oneness, that only knows that if we take time every day, and Jesus told us the same thing. He said, you have to go alone within yourself every day and touch that place within that knows only peace. But it's not enough just to go there and touch it. You can't just touch it. You have to sink into it. And once you sink into that place of peace, that's beyond the confusion and the problems and the worry and the discontent, it's that place that knows eternal peace. And that's why Jesus could go out in his life and be unaffected, discouraged by all that was going on during his time. But he could do his work. He could be in the river of his unique expression in the world. And the same for us. We have to do the deep work. So decide today, do I have the courage? Do I have the commitment to take time to keep that place within me alive and active? Because once we do that, then we have to step back. And remember, the Hopi Elder said, go into the middle of the river, eyes open, head above water, and see who's traveling with you. Because you see, there has to be a belief in all of us that with all of the confusion in the world and all the duality and the separation and all of that, when we believe there is a river of life that belongs to all of us, groups will emerge. There'll be spiritual communities. There'll be friendship communities. There'll be whatever they are, but groups of people will emerge that truly believe in this river of life. And they're willing to take it to the only place it goes. It goes to God, it goes to oneness. When we think about, is this really true? Is this really possible? Can there be a place of oneness? I'm going to ask you a question. Have you ever been in a place where you're just funky and you're walking around and somebody smiles at you? And it changes your whole life. You all of a sudden remember who you are. Or have you been that person that saw someone else that was having a difficult day, and all you had to do was smile, and you could see a remembrance in them that brought them back to remembering who they are? That's the river of life. We make it difficult sometimes. Oh, what do I have to do? Stretch, and grow. So I want to close right now in a prayer. So I'm going to invite you to just unravel yourself, put your feet on the ground, and imagine. We sang on Holy Ground last week, my favorite song, but just imagine you're standing in this river of life that surrounds us and fills us. And it's unique to each and every person, but it's only one Spirit. It's right here and right now. And as we put our feet in that river of inspiration and let it fill our body, fill our hearts, and fill our minds, and feel the connection to the one life, the one goodness, the one power that is ours here now, we decide to open. There's an opening in all of us, right here and now, to be an inlet for that beautiful Spirit of life. And we're going to let it fill us as white sparklies, as infinite love, as light right now. We're going to let it fill us till we're at the place of overflowing and we become an outlet for that same goodness of life. And just feel it right now. Feel that inspiration that is love, that is light, that is goodness, that is joy, that is possibility, that is unformed creative potential just waiting to be used by us right here and right now. And as we feel that in our bodies, I want to close with a saying from Hafez. And Hafez, a beautiful 14th century Sufi mystic, said it felt love. And he says, how did the rose ever open its heart and give to the world all its beauty? How did it do that? It felt the encouragement of light against its being. Otherwise, we all remain too frightened. So right now, just feel the encouragement of light within you, that spark of light, that divinity within, just wanting to be awakened and express. And I just know for all of us right here and now, as we leave today, we leave lighter and brighter, more open, more available, more ready to be all that God intended us to be. And as we say thank you, God, for all of this and so much more, and close that simple knowing with the affirmation, and so it is, I invite you to join all of us as we gather in the river of love.